our videos and supporting the channel. We appreciate you. If you're new to our channel, please hit that subscribe button right now. My name is Reverend Penelope Stewart. You can follow Chemistry on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you for being here with me today. I said I was going to be dropping this video. I've talked about it, and I've been doing a lot of research into the indigenous cultures, the Aborigines, the Negroes, the copper colored people that were already here in the Americas. The ancestors have been really, really dealing with me on this subject. It's been really hard to believe when they first told me this. It's been a while ago, maybe 2 years ago, but I never did really look into the subject. I never just really looked into it because I was like that, I just didn't believe that because like the rest of of us, we've been taught that, all dark skinned people come from Africa. The documentation, what we learn in school, what has been taught, we we have been taught that all dark skin come from Africa. And then the possibility that this theory could be totally not true, you know, I just couldn't believe it. I was at Toltec Mounds. I've been going down there for years in that area, the England, Arkansas, Scott, Arkansas area. I've been going down there for over 15 years. I have some type of intimate connection with the land there, and I never known why. So one day when I came to meet the ancestors, I asked them, why am I connected to this land? Why do I love coming down here? Why do I feel charged and better after I've come?
She mentioned something about England, Arkansas, and being connected there. I got peoples out that way in that area of Arkansas. So shout out, shout out to her on that right there for sure.
Down there in contact with that land, ancestors. Just quick as I answered the question, a thought crossed my mind. The thought entered my mind that you're from this land. And I was like, how can I be from this land? How long I've been here? And the thought came in just as quick. You've been here from the beginning of time. And I didn't understand that answer that the ancestors was giving me. Then later, my experience with the ancestors is usually when I doubt a message that they start sending information on my path that shows me otherwise. The more I think I know, the more I find I don't know working with the ancestors. Because if you follow the ancestors and you're a seeker of knowledge, you are going to truly follow the knowledge, the truth. You're going to do that. And that's what I do with when I follow the ancestors. This topic today is going to be, it's going to be long. I'm going to be upfront with you right there. If you're Afrocentric or a patriarch, then you're probably going to challenge a lot of this information and you probably won't like this video. That's fine. You can turn it off now. But I thought I would give you a warning because a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about, we're going to be discussing because I want you to chime in on this subject. I want to get your thoughts too because this is where my research is leading me. I'm not saying that you got to accept this wholeheartedly, but it's something to really think about. When we start looking over this evidence and start looking at this documentation, because we're going to be looking at the documentation. This is the first time that I've made a video where we're going in together, observing this information for ourselves and taking it all in. So you're going to be looking at all this research with me. We're going to be following another excellent YouTuber. Dane Calloway is wonderful. I love his work on showing the paper genocide because that's very important. A lot of paper genocide went into effect in changing who we are. We're blacks, we're Negroes. We're African Americans. We're Afro Americans. No group of people name has changed so much. I promise you. So we're gonna. He's very excellent at that. But the main YouTuber, which this fella here, he's. You probably need to subscribe to him too to stay in the loop. You don't have to take everything he says word for word, but he has some excellent
Like,
information
share,
and
subscribe.
documentation. It's some of it is it's unrefutable. I'm just like, wow, it's so much to take in. So much challenging information. His name is Kiri Mio. I think that's his name, but I'll leave a link here and show you where his site is. And we're going to be going on his site too. So you'll be able to see his YouTube channel as well. Very good information. But right now, I wanted to talk about my own observation with spirit and really get my attention to the subject. Just following the ancestors and following the symbolism, because there was so much symbolism. Ancestors just kept sending so much symbolism in my mind. I would look at pictures or a picture or image across my path, and the ancestors be like, "Here it is," and I'm like, "Oh, I never thought of it like that." And so I'm going to share some of those thoughts with you, the symbolism, the walk with spirit, and then we're going to jump into the documentation, looking at the other work that others have did on the subject and the books and things like that, because I know that's going to be important for a lot of you that's walking on this path, that's trying to grow. A lot of your spiritual walk is based in history too, because you're truly on a spiritual path. Then your spiritual methods of healing or your spiritual practices is going to lead you on a journey of history, on a journey of spiritual historical practices. So it's like a byproduct, if you ask me. That's just my opinion. You can take it or leave it. There is no must here on this channel. There's just information. I just share information, and I like people to think because I'm a thinker. So if you're a thinker, you're in the right place. So let me jump in here and just share with you about my experience in the mounds and my experience with spirit. My first experience started in the mounds. You know, I was looking at something that was older than me, and it was connected to my ancestors, these pre-Columbian civilizations. And that's where I had my first experience, and finding out they were all over North America, and to find out about the Washita Empire and the Black Indians. All of this stuff kept running across my path. Chief Warhorse, my hat goes off to her, Dane Calloway, Curie Mio, and many more that's out there. And the Moors too, but I have
She dropping knowledge, man. Pure knowledge. I was reading a book called Black Spark, White Fire, and it talks about how like the Comedians would know about the currents and how they were magnetic and how they can be able to drift down to the Americas back in BC. Let's keep it going. Like, share, and subscribe.
have very mixed feelings about the Moors. I have very mixed feelings about their looking at their history and what they, because we have to look at it. They helped set up the United States government, which had a significant impact on the indigenous cultures here in America. We have to look at that. So every dark face isn't a good face. I'm starting to learn that too. Even I was looking at what his name, Graham Hancock. He's done some excellent research. We're going to be looking at his research too. because he's done some excellent research. You can see the ancestors working through this man because he is a seeker of knowledge. He is a seeker of truth. And he couldn't believe it either. It knocked his socks off when he found out just how old America is and how it is. Archaeologists totally ignore the ancient history here in America. But I don't think it's being, ignored. I think it's being done on purpose and for a good reason, and you're going to find out just how important America is on the world stage as we move on in this discussion. So I got to looking at the pyramids all over North America, South America, especially in Peru, because the pyramids in Peru predate some of the pyramids in Egypt. When we look at South America, I mean, we're gonna be going deep with this because I have some real stuff to talk about. So this video is probably going to be long. This video is probably going to be the longest video I've ever made. But when we look at the pyramids, okay, and then I want you to look at the locations too, because when we look at the location, we follow the matriarch culture because this culture is totally been ignored. When we look at the indigenous culture, we're looking at the hunter-gatherers culture. We're looking at the matriarch culture. And we also see echoes of it too when we look at our calendar. When you look at the lunar calendar and you're seeing the full moon and all that being placed on there, you're looking at the essence, the history, her story of the matriarch culture. So that's important too, because it's important. It's important for me as a woman, an Aborigine.
And as I'm looking at the structure here, this structure right here, look at that, man. Don't that look like as if that was made for battle? You know what I'm saying? Many windows here, like somebody, just either if it wasn't made for battle, maybe this was like a hotel or something like that where guests would stay if they came into the country. And this particular, the way this looks here, shoot, man, that could probably be a ship. Yeah. I, you just ponder at this, man. It can look like a lot of things, man, or plays a portal. More look at hey, it could have been a portal where it can transport. You never know. But appreciate y'all for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Here we go.
An indigenous woman to find myself in history. Connecting with my ancestors. That's been a very important part of my journey is finding myself in my journey, connecting with those ancestral mothers. You know, the you know this has totally been ignored, and it deserves a discussion here. Like I said, there's no must here. This is just my journey with the ancestors, what I've learned, what I'm unlearning, looking at the symbology and following spirit. So we're seeing here where these pyramids, you know, they're here in Africa and they're here in Peru or South America. And then we see them here in Asia. What is this about? There's a connection with all of those, and I start seeing those connections, especially when I look at the book Mama Wati and I forgot the name of the other book, The Sibyls. Yes, that's the name of the book, The Sibyls. I did a book review on there, and looking at that book, but see that sister right there, that mother there, because I have to still give her respect. There's still a out of Africa theory, and maybe I got that wrong. Maybe some of her ancestors were from there, and that's why she had to go back and do something, get totally integrated into that spiritual practice. So that's what she did to really integrate herself with spirit. She went all the way back to Africa to do that. But that, like I said, that's a very good book because we're still tracking the history of women, of dark-skinned women in the world. And that really gave me a head start on really finding this information out, being able to make the connection. So I do recommend that book as well. If you really want to get into what I'm really talking about and you really want to understand it, go back and watch those videos. This discussion will make so much more sense to you after you have seen that book review and then come here. But that out of Africa theory, it doesn't make sense. Once I started looking at the history of America, ancient America, it did not make sense because we see dark-skinned people all over the world: Fiji, Hawaii, Panama, Asia. Even back, the further back they dig, and if you go there, Guatemala, Bolivia, we go to these places, we see dark-skinned people already being there, indigenous to those places. So it shouldn't surprise us that in America it's the same thing. It's the same thing. In fact, it's the home of indigenous culture. Once we start looking at some of this reference and stuff, you're going to see that this could possibly be, and I say possible because history, let me correct myself. Technology and research and archaeology is always changing. So we're always updating our information. So history and all that stuff will change. And as you look at this information, you'll see that if we are properly taught in this type of manner, what we've been taught of history will totally change. It totally changes everything we have learned because this out of Africa theory, it doesn't hold water once we start looking at world history, looking at these artifacts, looking at these things. It doesn't make sense. So it's important to keep an open mind and be a seeker of truth when we're following this information. So I started looking at all these pyramids and ancestors. I knew then that, yeah, the ancestral mothers set that up. You guys told me that. Guys told me that about the mounds, and the mounds was phase, and that was a part of the hunter-gatherer culture, and that's how the pyramids really started out as they progressed, and I start looking closer at the Incans and the Mayan culture here because you hear archaeologists talk about them all the time. And then I just took a closer look at them and the history, looking in South America and looking at these people, and that plume serpent really jumped out at me because when I looked at the plume serpent, I thought about the Nagas. I was really starting to uncover some things about America. Because I don't know that much about America. I've been kind of educated about the others, but America, I hadn't. It puts more of the puzzle together because it's for me. It put more of the puzzle together when I look at the matriarch culture in America because that's never been discussed. I've been taught that Africa is the motherland. That's where the first mother come from. But when we look at the Americas, it totally shifts the paradigm. It totally shifts the paradigm. But we're gonna discuss more about this as we move on.
That's major what she's saying. She's saying that instead of like everybody just originating out of Africa, man, Yahweh probably made it to where it was already people in other areas. Like I said, whether you read the Bible or not, I did read it. There was a passage in there when it talks about how it was Adam and Eve that copulated with one another, but there was also other people already established. So when I read that, it was like, hey, hold up, man. Can't, it gotta be already people already out here because that's how I'm reading it. But, you know, interpretation is like art to the mind. Like, share, and subscribe. Here we go.
Going to make sense. I don't mean to jump ahead, but I looked at the plume feather serpent, and then I looked at the Nagas. The feathers are very important because you see the feathers, they seem to go follow. The feathers seem to be follow, and they seem to be just as old as the snake symbolism. And you see that in the Bible too, when the Bible talks about being protected up under the feathers, under the wings. You see that in Psalms 27. Go back and read that. I thought that the ancestors were just dealing with me like that, because we know that the Bible is from those ancient mothers who prophesied about the future, and the patriarchs wrote their story around the stories in the Bible, because you see them marrying these matriarch women, these spiritual women. They were very magical, very in the height of metaphysical knowledge, and these men were marrying them. Go back and look at that video, Mama Wata, and this will make more sense to you. If you haven't read those books, go back and look at those book reviews. But I started looking at that, and I was like, wow, look at that, the feathered serpent. You know, then I had to go back and look at the serpent mound, because the serpent mound is a great representation and an indication
I just noticed that bird that's sitting on the dragon. That's crazy.
that those mothers were here. And you seeing this serpent in every culture. I'm going to go into that too. Because this serpent seems to be in a part of every culture. You can see that serpent in Asia as well. We're seeing that serpent in Asia as well. So that's an indication of the matriarch culture being present there. This motif really screamed out. The ancestors was really screaming out some information to me. You know, symbology, if we just look at things sometimes, like I said, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And this what this picture starts screaming to me. And my ancestors' mothers was just like, look, I'm standing behind him. I'm standing behind him.
Yo, this picture right here, this thing right here. I don't know why. To me, it looks like a building and like a meteor crashing into it or something. It's crazy how you can look at these things and just think, wow, what is all this going on? All this, illustration, symbology. It's definitely a wonder.
I'm protecting him. I'm powering him. Look at me. I'm giving him something. I am the one with the feathers. I am the one with the divinity. And if we pay attention to these motifs like this, men don't have these feathers. It's only the women.
Hold on, look at this right here. What is this? Doesn't look like wheels. Or remember those old record players that they used to have with the horn right there? Man, I'm telling you, nothing new under the sun.
It's only Osset. It's only the divine mother. All right. And and I had to ask myself this too. I was like, okay, so if this ancient world in America, because I had a hard time, I'm gonna get into that too in a minute. But I had a hard time of finding any evidence of matriarch culture here in America. You know, I had a very hard time, but I had to keep looking at the feathers and the symbolism to really look at the matriarch culture here. And I was like, well, why is it so hidden like this? Why is the matriarch culture so hidden like this? And why we don't have more evidence of it here in America? You know, and ancestors revealed to me, because this is where the ancient mother comes from. Think of it like the game of chess, and it's still being practiced in European royalty. But think of it like chess. You protect the queen at all costs. She has people she allocate her power to, but you protect her
Y'all see what that says right there? An emblem,
at all
an emblem of America.
costs. And so is she the first protectress. So a lot of while we can't find out a lot about her too, is that she was highly protected because she is the ancient one. So a lot of information that we can find about her too is because she was highly protected in the ancient world. The ancient mother was protected. The one who wielded the divine power. The one who was the word of God. This is the Sibyls. If you learn more about the Sibyls, you'll learn that they were the word of God. They were the word of moral authority. They gave out spiritual instructions and rituals to be passed down. They prophesied. You know, we learn.
You like a warrior, don't you? Like she then knock this off and win. Was that an ocelot or something? She ain't nothing to play with that arch. It's a beautiful picture.
More about this as we move on. So I looked at that motif and I was just like, wow, you know, it's worth 1,000 words. So look at that, the wings, because we see the wings in here in America, the feathers here in America too, and that goes on into the pre-Columbian civilization, the Carnival. We see that being present there. So these are essences or echoes of her history right here being passed on. And we see that in North America. And so I said, I start seeing these symbolisms in these videos on the work when I start doing the research on this subject. And in the research that we're going to be looking at, because see, my research is totally different because my perspective is totally from the matriarch perspective. It's totally telling the story of the ancestral mothers. And the videos that I'm watching, doing the research on, is from the perspective that Aborigines was already here. But I'm totally interested in finding myself the matriarch culture that's been ignored. That's my interest. So when I was seeing this, I started noticing that there were different emblems for America. I seen the emblems when we see the Moors or the men indigenous culture. When we start looking at these Moors, it was men in kind of in those. Then I started looking at the women, how some of the emblems had women, dark-skinned women in there. And I was like, the ancestors like, pay attention to this because this is us. This is our legacy. These are our empires. We, the hunter-gatherers, were the owners of the land. And you'll see that in matriarch culture, they wield more power of the land because of their connection with Mother Earth. And you see she has, I don't know what this is around her. I don't know what this is around her. Kind of look like a snake. I don't know what that is around her. But because they were hunting gatherers, because they were planters, they were agriculturists. They were good at working the land and bearing fruit and food from Mother Earth. They had this connection with her. They willed the power of the land. They owned the land. Now the men were the enforcer of the law. And some of the Moors will tell you that too. The woman lays down the law. The man enforces the law. She was our first mother. She came directly from the earth. Okay? That's how the ancestors speak to me. And so when I saw this emblem, I was like, wow. And here it is with the feathers at the top. Okay? The fringes at the bottom. And this bow was originally made by the Amazon women. Look at this bow. This style of bow was made and designed by the Amazon women. That's going to be interesting too as we move on, because I'm going to talk about a little bit about that. Like I said, this is going to be a long video because history and spirituality it's one of my passions. So I love it. And so this video is going to be kind of long. I'm sorry, you guys, but it's going to be full of helpful information and my thoughts. You can chime in on it. If you disagree on it, put that in the comments, because I want to know your thoughts, your observations, your comments. And nothing is written in stone here. These are just my observations and what I've learned looking at history and doing the research. So you're seeing her with that, and that looks like the leopard because, that Wakanda story is indigenous to the Americas. It's not indigenous to Africa. They're working hard to put all dark-skinned people in Africa, but we were already in most of the places that we were in. All right, our mothers were everywhere. All right, they went everywhere. They were navigators, and we're going to see that too as we move on. They were already traveling the seas and the oceans, and I'm going to show you that too as we move on in this discussion. But pay attention to that. Symbolism was just screaming out at me. Then I've seen this many of times, and I thought this was a big deal. I was like, yeah, hooray! For the French, they sent us a statue of liberty that was black to show that America was built on the backs of black people. That's how I always saw that. I've been seeing this for a couple of years now, and you probably been seeing it and been saying the same thing. But one day I looked at this, and the ancestors said, nope, that's not what that means. That's probably what they told you what it means, but that's not what that means. And I was like, what? That's not what that means? No. That is a symbolism of black women. The ancient mother originated from America, and all indigenous people originating from here. That is what that is. And I was like, really? That's what that is. Semitic people originated from here. And I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. I was like, I never looked at it like that. Said, look at it. This was a patriarch era. This is a patriarch era that when men were ruling. Why would they put a woman for symbolism, for justice and liberty? Why would they use a woman for that? These are echoes of our culture, of who we are. We set up the government. Like I said, the woman lays down the law, the man enforces the law. See, I never looked at it like that. The ancestors just was dealing with me. I never looked at things from that perspective. My paradigm was shifting. And I thought I knew things, but I really didn't know. I'm following spirit here. This is my journey. I'm sharing with you. You don't have to take this. I'm just sharing my journey with you. I just follow the ancestral mothers. I want to know more about that older culture. And so my mind just opens up to it. I guess, a true seeker has an open mind. Nothing is factual. Everything is changing every day. Nothing stays the same. As we come into new knowledge, new information, it challenges us. And spirit certainly challenges you because you have to unlearn some things and learn new things. And that, I guess that's what's been going on with me. But I looked at that and I was like, oh my gosh, I never seen it like that. So that's something to think about. Why are they using, the question to ask here is, why are they using a black woman? Why did France send over a black Statue of Liberty? Why did they do that in a patriarch era and culture?
Yeah, it's real, ain't it? Telling you how it really is. Give it to you the way it's supposed to be. This is what they call critical race theory. But it's just nothing but what was going on before the copies. Get what I'm saying? Like, share, and subscribe.
And then we have to ask ourselves, they still kept the woman, but they made her look more European. They made her look more white. Okay? All right? They just made her look more white. So that's a question to ask yourself. Why would they do that? And that went on. And I looked at this, the emblem of Africa. Again, we have another indigenous woman with the feather on top of her head. Again, we still have the feathers from Osset. We still have the feathers here. Okay, that's been an ancient representation too, and so has the serpent. The serpent and the feathers, the plumed serpent, the winged serpent, because we see that in Asia as well, has always been a signature of the matriarch culture. We see a woman here walking with
With the lion head, boy. Nothing to play with. Old to women.
a lion, and this is the very description of the Amazon women. That's how that they were described by the Greeks. They were feared. They were feared by men, and you couldn't really, be a warrior or a soldier if you didn't defeat an Amazon queen. And that says a lot. That's letting you know she was the first protectress. And some of these women, they had these magical weapons. They had magical weapons. You seen that movie Wonder Woman? She had magical weapons. So our ancestral mothers were in touch with those metaphysical powers, that metaphysical energy, that energy, magical energy, whatever you want to call it. They were hard to defeat. That's what that witch hunt thing was all about. They were trying to stamp that out. It was hard for men to defeat that kind of power because of our connection with Earth. They had to totally make up a another god. You know the story if you've seen the video. And I'm not trying to throw men under the bus here. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to find myself in history and find out more about that culture. It's very hard to do, but the facts are out there. I guess I'm showing you where you can think for yourself and see the culture being present. All right, so this is a symbolism of an Amazon uh, matriarch. You see the line there, you see the feather in her hand, she's gathering something. Again, this was the hunter-gatherers culture. Is this a snake on the ground? That look like a snake hand on the ground. Right there at the bottom, down there by the lion. So again, the symbolism is there if we were to look at it. All right, and this is a sister. All right, she's an Aborigine. Look how dark she is, a copper color race. Again, we're used to this out of Africa theory, but let's look at this out of America theory a little bit closer too, because we found some ancient human remains here as well. All right, so let's just look at that. We're looking at this theory now and the matriarch culture. Now, when we look at Queen Khalifa, the seal of Queen Khalifa, again, we got these women, these Aboriginal women representing these states, representing these continents. These Aborigine women are on the seal. And I had a hard time finding, I was
That's beautiful. Look at this.
able to look up the Queen of Africa. I was able to look up the Queen of, these other places. But it was very hard to find it in America with indigenous cultures because, again, America is an ancient America. I know they're telling you this the new world, but this is the old world. This is where Atlantis, this is where it was considered Atlantis, here in the Americas. Here in the Americas where was considered as Atlantis at one time. Yes, we're going to look at that too. So this is the ancient world. So I had to find the ancient name, the indigenous name for queen. And when I started looking at that, I said, what is the ancient name? The ancient name for queen. What would they call? What would the indigenous culture, the Incas, the Mayans, the oldest civilization here? Because the Incas and the Mayans, when we focus on them, we focus on the most indigenous cultures in the world. But see, we don't pay attention to it. That's why they're always talking about that, because that is the most indigenous culture in the world. And we're looking at the Olmecs and all that. These are the most indigenous cultures in the world. Okay, so when we start looking at that, we like say, because they talk about his story. We're looking at his story when patriarchs came to rise, because we're going to look at the meaning of patriarch and matriarchs too. I'm going to show you all of this. So these are not just all of my thoughts. I'm going to show you where this stuff is actually like this. So when I started looking at what were they calling queens, some of the queens at that time, what were the indigenous culture calling their queens? And I looked it up. And when I did, I came up on this lady. She's Tano, one of our ancestral mothers. Her name was Anna Koona. And the women in that time were called cacique or chieftain or chiefess. But cacique is more of an indigenous term. And I like and notice she has this eagle on top of her head. Again, the wings.
That's crazy that the same name here, it's some ladies Underwood called Cassie. So you see how you see things in the present, but it's all tied to. It's crazy, man. Like, share, and subscribe, man. Y'all getting some real good information over here.
Wings, the feathers. I don't know. This look like kind of like a snake. This could be a snake, the staff that she's holding. All of this, and you see this in ancient Egypt too. So this is indigenous culture, indigenous matriarch empire. That's kind of all over the world, because when we look at Queen Califia, they said she had a fleet of ships that she was going all over the world, to Africa, Asia, all these places. When we look at her army, and we look at history, how men came in contact with her here, and Herodotus, I know wasn't Herodotus, it was someone, I think it was the Lewis and Clark expedition, described her and her culture as living as the Amazon women. And then when we're looking at some of these emblems, these women look like Amazon women, how they describe them. They were the first one to make that first style bow, hunting bow, okay? They were feared men. I mean, they had stories about these fierce stories about these women. I mean, men, you couldn't even call yourself a man if you couldn't defeat one of them, because they were so fierce. They were almost undefeatable because of these magical weapons they had as well. Look at the story Wonder Woman, but picture that as being, there were other complexions in the Amazon women's empire, but for the most part, the indigenous women ran those empires because they were in connection with the ancient mothers. Again, hunter-gatherer cultures, the one who started these civilizations. They started mathematics. Look at our lunar calendar. You still see that on our calendar. It's still showing you the full moon, the quarter moon, and all that. That is the echo of the matriarch culture, because the farmers still go by a lunar map. The moon controls the water, the irrigation. The sun helps it grow, but if it wasn't for the water and the moon being able to know when to plant certain seed, we wouldn't have the nutrients that we need from Mother Earth. And these women figured all of that out. Remember, we talked about that in the first Mama Wata video. She is the first mother. She is the first creatress, the protectress. She is the mother of all humans. She give birth without a man. All right? She was the first human. That's what that story with Jesus and Mary is about, said in Horace. That's what that story is about. And we're looking at this story. This is when we first see her magical power, because she put her mate back together again. Remember, she's the one that wields the spiritual, metaphysical power. She puts him back together again. So, the ancestors, so many
Yeah, man.
things
Might
jump out at me when
cut
I'm
it off
reading this
right here
stuff.
and make a part
You
two.
know,
If
my
y'all know
mind
what
just
to
worked
do, man,
different.
that's how
I've
we
read those
rolling out
stories
here. Like,
so
share,
many times,
subscribe.
but I didn't see
Much love.
where the ancestors' mother's story was fitting into that. And now that I'm